And the second endpoint or the second target is node exporter. So everything is fine. You can go to this endpoint. In the first part, we have already set up and configured our Prometheus service. So let's see if it works one more time. If you remember, this was our Prometheus VM. Let's switch to root user. Now I'm going to check the status of our service. So system.catl, status, and Prometheus. So right now it's active. Let's see that if it works. Let's check the IP address of this VM. So if you know that, it was Prometheus CentOS, and the external IP address is this one. And here I already opened this web page. So as you see that it works. So we have no issues here. In this part of this series, we are gonna install and configure the node exporter. But before that, let me give you a very small description or information about the node exporters, or maybe in general exporters. So exporters are just used to expose metrics, and then the Prometheus will scrape those metrics in some interval which you are gonna set. Basically, exporters sit in your nodes, or let's say in your virtual machines, which you want to monitor, and they just expose metrics. Prometheus itself provides a few exporters. You can see in the download page of the Prometheus. So as you can see that it provides Blackbox, Graphite, MySQL exporter, Node exporter, and a few others. So in this video we are going to use Node exporter, which is one of the simple exporters, and it is used to collect basic system metrics from Linux machines. By the way, you can write your own exporter as well, but it's out of scope of this tutorial, so we are just going to use Node exporter for the sake of this video. So it is time to start. I have added a small installation steps in this guide. So in the first part we just set up our Prometheus, and in the second part we're gonna configure Node exporter. So I have already added installation steps in this guide. We're gonna use these installation steps. By the way, I already created a new VM in Google Cloud. It's called the Node Exporter CentOS because we are using the CentOS distribution. You can also create a new VM by watching the first part of this series, where I already explained how to create a new VM in Google Cloud. So I'm gonna use this Node Exporter CentOS VM. First of all, we have to install the binary file of our Node Exporter. In the download page, we are going to copy this link, and then in our VM, I'm going to use Node Exporter CentOS. This is a very fresh, very new VM, so that's why I'm going to create a root password. Let's say that sudo passvd, and then let's switch to root user. Okay, so we are going to install Node Exporter. I'm going to use wget command. It is not installed because it's a new VM. Let's install wget. Okay, it's ready. So let's use wget and paste the link that you just copied from Prometheus download page and click enter. So let's clear the screen. I'm going to use Ctrl L. It's a shortcut to clear the screen, and let's do LL. So it is here. We just downloaded zip file of Node Exporter, and let's see what it says in this guide. So it says that create a directory called Node Exporter, and then we are gonna extract our zip file to that directory. So I'm just going to copy these commands. You can do the same thing as well. At first it will create Node Exporter and then extract the files from this zip file to the Node Exporter folder. And then we are going to delete the zip file itself. So it is done. And go to the extracted directory and start Node Exporter. Let's see. Let's do LL. So we have this Node Exporter directory. Let's go to this directory. Let's clear the screen, ll, and we have again this directory. Let's go to here, clear the screen, ll. Okay, we have 3 files: license, notice, and node exporter. As you see, that node exporter is binary file. We have this execute permission here, so we have to start this node exporter using dot and slash and then node exporter, and then press enter. So now it started, and if you see that it says it is listening on the address, port address 9100. So let's copy the IP address of this VM. So it was this one, 221. I already pasted here. Let's refresh the panel. Obviously it doesn't work. Let's see why. So node exporter will start listening on for connections at default port 9100, but first of all we have to open this port, or we have to allow this port using the firewall D rule. For this video I already used Google Cloud VM. My VM is on the cloud, so that's why I'm gonna create a new firewall D rule in Google Cloud. But if you are using your local machine, you can also follow these steps to open the port or allow the port 9100 in your local machine. But let's create a new firewall D rule in our Google Cloud. So from here we are going to go to VPC network, and in VPC network, from the firewall section, we are going to create a new firewall rule. Click on that. Let's give a name, so it will be node exporter port. We are going to paste the IP address so it will be accessible from all networks, and let's just set it to all instances. And then we have to specify our port, so it will be TCP port, and as a default node exporter runs at port 9100. So let's just paste it here, 9100, and then just create. In the first part we already created Prometheus port. It was 1990. It's a default port for Prometheus, and now we just created a new firewall rule which allows port 9100. And let's refresh this panel one more time. I think I made a mistake. It should be 9100. Sorry for that. Let's press enter. Okay, it works. You can see that our node exporter here, and we can also click this metrics, and you can see all the metrics provided by Linux machine. And which Linux machine? Which is our new VM, and it was node exporter CentOS. So let's see what we'll do after that. Okay, here's the most important part, I think. So although it is optional, but I highly recommend it to set this node exporter as a systemd service, because it's really easy to use. As it was in the first part, we are going to create a user, and then that user will run this node exporter service. So let's copy all this code here. So first of all, it will create a new user called node exporter. Then we are going to create node exporter directory under etc, and then we are going to set the permissions for this directory as node exporter. I mean, the user node exporter will access to this directory. Let's just stop this service for now, and let's paste these commands. Press enter. So it's already created. Let's see actually if it's created in this etc directory, node exporter. Okay, it is here. Yes, it's here. And after that we are going to copy node exporter file, node exporter binary file from the extracted directory to the user local bin directory, and then we are going to change the ownership to sorry, it is written in Prometheus, but it should be node exporter, so I will edit it later. So we are going to copy node exporter to the user local bin, and then we are going to change the ownership to node exporter, as you see here, node exporter group, and the user will be node exporter. Okay, let's copy. Let's paste it here. Press enter. It is done. And after that, we are going to create node exporter service file, as we already did for the Prometheus in the first part of this series. So I'm going to create a service file under etc systemd system. Let's clear the screen. So let's open this file. It's now empty because we have to paste some commands there. Here you can see the description node exporter. You can write actually anything you want, it doesn't matter. And then once after, and then as a service, so the user that will run this service, it will be node exporter, and group also will be node exporter. We already created this user, and the service type will be simple, and how it should be started. So it will be started from user local bin node exporter directory. Why? Because if you remember, we already copied our node exporter binary file to this location. So that's why you just use this location here. Okay, let's copy them and paste it here. Press I letter in your keyboard to go to the insert mode and paste the codes here. And then ESC and then column WQ, it will save the file. Let's read it. So systemd and system, and under that node exporter. Okay, it is there. And after that, we are gonna reload the systemd service and then enable service to start at boot time. So this part actually will we're gonna reload the daemon, and after that we're gonna enable node exporter. Why? Because in that case it will be started at boot time. And then we are going to start the node exporter. Let's copy all of them. But before that, let's see if our node exporter works or not. Refresh the panel. So it doesn't work. Now let's paste this command here. Okay, it already created symlink. Let's create the screen. Let's check the status of node exporter. So systemctl status and then node exporter. Okay, it is active and running. So let's see that it really works. Okay, it works. You see that our node exporter here, and it works. So we don't have any issues here. Let's see what we'll do after that. So I use the external IP address of my VM, my virtual machine in Google Cloud. But again, if you are using your local machine, you can just type this URL and then, oh sorry, actually it should be 921.900 because that was the default port for node exporter. But I think there's a typo when I just copied the things from the first part to the second part. But I will edit some later. But it should be localhost 9100, and this one also should be 9100. Anyway, so as a third step, we are gonna configure node exporter host as a target on Prometheus host. So it means that right now our Prometheus, let's go to the Prometheus, and if we run up command here, let's execute. As you see that there's only one instance, and it's the Prometheus virtual machine or Prometheus host itself. So if you go to the status, then targets, so there's only one instance itself, so it is Prometheus itself actually. So there is only one instance, so it is it's a Prometheus host itself. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add our node exporter host, that VM, node exporter CentOS VM, to the Prometheus. So Prometheus will understand that there is another VM, and the Prometheus should collect metrics, or let's say they should scrape metrics from that host. And let's see what's written here. So open etc Prometheus YAML file and paste following content to that file. So this directory is on the Prometheus service itself, I mean Prometheus server. So here we have two VMs, right? This RHCSA, it's my for personal use, it doesn't matter, you don't need to create that VM. but for the sake of this series, we have two VMs, Prometheus CentOS and Node Exporter CentOS. Now we are going to add this Node Exporter CentOS host or VM to this Prometheus CentOS. So let's go to the Prometheus CentOS. I'm going to clear the screen, and we are going to open the Prometheus YAML file under etc Prometheus, and let's see what file we have here. So we have console libraries, consoles, they are the binary files, and we have also Prometheus YAML file. So it's the configuration file that is used to configure your Prometheus service. So we are going to open this file. etc Prometheus and Prometheus YAML. Let me just make it a bit smaller. So we have global configuration. For example, here the scrape interval is 15 seconds. So actually it means that the Prometheus will scrape your hosts or your VMs for every 15 seconds. And then we have also evaluation interval, and then we can add actually some rules, and then we have these scrape configs. So this is the global. You see that we have job name, it's called Prometheus, and the static configs. So as a target, we are going, let's say that right now we are monitoring our Prometheus host itself. So Prometheus CentOS VM itself. That's why it is localhost 1990. And if you just remember that the job name is Prometheus, and if you go here, and you see that here it says our job name is Prometheus and instance is localhost itself, so that VM itself. Now let's paste this, let's copy this config and then paste it here. Go to the insert mode and then you can paste it here. So we added another job, so it is Node Exporter. And here, as you can see, that our scrape interval is 5 seconds. So this config scrape interval will override this global config. As a default, scrape interval is 15 seconds, but this config will override this global configuration. So it will be 5 seconds for this job, only for this job. So the job is Node Exporter. And then static configs. So as a target, you have to provide your IP address and the port itself. So our IP address for this Node Exporter CentOS virtual machine is 31, so simply this one, right? So what we have done here, we just pasted that IP address and the port itself, so 9100, it's a default port for Node Exporter, and we just add it here. So it will understand that the Prometheus will scrape metrics from this target machine. I think it is clear. So let's press escape button and then save this file. And if you refresh the panel, there should be another target. Okay, we don't have it. Why we don't have it? Okay, I understand, because this is the configuration file, and if you made any changes in the configuration file, so Prometheus YAML, you have to restart your service. So let's restart it, systemctl, then restart our Prometheus service. And let's check this page again. Let's refresh it. Okay, it says state is unknown because we just restarted it and it will take a little bit time. Let's refresh it again. Okay, one more time. Okay, it says Node Exporter is done. Why it is done? Let's see. Let's check the status. Actually, it is active. Why it says it's done? Let's refresh one more time. Something is wrong. I can see that for this endpoint for the Node Exporter, it is 148 for the IP address, but here it should be 221. Okay, I think this is a typo here, so it should be 228.93.221. Let's just copy it, and from here let's do one more time. So here it should be the exact same IP address. I'm going to delete the current one. Okay, save the file again, and let's restart our Prometheus server one more time. Let's check this page. Okay, I think now it works. So it will take a little bit time to get the stats of the Prometheus itself. Let's do one more time. Okay, now it is here. As you can see that now we have two targets. The first target is Prometheus host itself. So simply it is this VM, Prometheus CentOS. And the second endpoint, or the second target, is node exporter. And the endpoint itself is this URL, and also our job name right now is node exporter, not the Prometheus, because we added a new job. So everything is fine. You can go to this endpoint. You can see your metrics here, and the state of all VMs or virtual machines are up. So they are up and running, so there is no problem. I think that's all about node exporter. So in the next part we're gonna set up Grafana and then create a simple dashboard using metrics which exposed by node exporter.